Hello and welcome, I'm Reece, and here's what happened this week. Power shortages are complicating work to rebuild Taipei's aging housing. As John Van Trieste reports, it's just the latest problem with Taiwan's strained and fragile grid.
In Taipei, last month's magnitude 7.2 earthquake has put fresh attention on an old issue, the need to replace aging buildings. Over 70% of the city's housing is more than 30 years old, meaning it predates today's strict building codes. But the state of the power grid could dampen demand for new builds. A planned substation has been delayed for years, putting pressure on the power supply in parts of the city. Yet demand for power keeps growing in these same areas. The state-run power company wants to make sure existing customers don't lose out as new housing goes up. So, new builds will need to install a remote switch that will shut off the supply when needed, provided they use more than 100 kilowatt hours. Almost all new builds will be affected, as the average household uses up to 3 times that amount. Each switch costs over $6,000, adding to the cost of buying. The power company says this is a necessary move. But this means buyers will have to pay steep Taipei prices for a home that might not even have reliable power. The substation that will relieve the pressure isn't expected until the end of 2025. On the street, views about the policy are mixed.
The
real estate industry, though, says the program won't impact demand for high-end builds too much.
This
is just the latest facet of a long-standing energy crunch in Taiwan. The country is a tech and manufacturing center with high demand, but it relies on imported fossil fuels and is working to phase out nuclear power. The grid's also suffered a series of malfunctions in recent years, leading to blackouts in urban centers like Taipei. These power problems will be among the biggest tests the incoming Lai Ching-te administration will face. Scott Huang and John Van Trieste for TaiwanPlus.
Health risks from air pollution are much greater than previously thought. That's according to a new report from Taiwan's top health researchers. As Chris Gorin reports, slow progress on cleaning up the country's air could cause problems down the road.
Smog. It's a familiar sight to those living in Taiwan's major cities, and new data shows the health concerns go beyond just your lungs. The respiratory effects of pollution have long been known, but exposure to particle matter such as PM 2.5 can also affect other parts of the body, especially among older people.
所以老人的这个肾脏病的病人一定要严防这个 PM 暴露在高暴露的这样的一个 2.5， 不然会引起缺血性的这样的一个因为慢性肾脏所引起的缺血性刚才讲的心脏病。
Higher levels of air pollution also increase the risk of degenerative brain diseases like Alzheimer's.
The risk of Alzheimer's disease is 4 times compared with those with very low level. And for the vascular dementia, it's like 2 times higher.
The report from Taiwan's National Health Research Institutes says there's been a downward trend in the country's air pollution levels. But outside groups paint a less rosy picture. Air quality tracker IQ Air says Taiwan has the 3rd worst air quality in East Asia. And in most of Taiwan's major cities, pollution levels are between 2 and 5 times higher than levels deemed safe by the World Health Organization. With Taiwan's population rapidly aging, pollution-related health issues could cause problems for the whole country.
Taiwan will go to super age society very soon. So that means we have a lot of very high portion of population they are susceptible to the air pollutant. So the health care burden will definitely increase a lot.
The government aims to reduce air pollution to the level recommended in the UN's Sustainable Development Goals. But faced with a demographic dilemma, Taiwan's window for meeting those goals in time to avoid a crisis is quickly running out. Ryan Wu and Chris Gorin for TaiwanPlus.
Temperatures in the mountains of Taiwan are rising faster than the global average. As the effects of climate change increase, scientists are worried that this may threaten the country's highland biodiversity. Wesley Lewis has the story.
High up above the plains, Taiwan's lush mountain ranges contain a wealth of biodiversity. These ecosystems thrive in cooler temperatures, but climate change is threatening the delicate balance of life here.
山区一直是在保育生物多样性很重要的地方，而我们对他们的气候变化状况其实了解相对是少很多。我们辨识出全世界可能受到暖化威胁比较严重的山区。那这个其实在不管是联合国之后要做全球的保育计划的时候，其实就可以把这些地方当作优先去保护跟研究的地方。
With more than 250 peaks over 3,000 meters high, Taiwan has the highest density of large mountains of any island on Earth. Researcher Shen Shengfeng has been monitoring temperature changes in these mountains and conducting population surveys of vulnerable local species.
埋葬虫是一个对温度非常敏感的虫，然后呢，所以我们其实沿着海拔调查它的密度，我们就可以了解说，譬如说温度变高变低的时候，它们的族群是会怎么样的反应。
Shen says burrowing beetles are a good indicator of climate change, as they depend on cool temperatures to reproduce. To understand more about the effects of climate change on local temperatures, Shen is looking at isotherms, a meteorological tool that shows the planet's surface heat.
这个是我们把台湾这个等温线上升的速率就是气候速率跟全球的比较，那台湾大概是6点多，那全球的平均大概是6，所以我们比全球的气候速率高了一点。
In other words, Shen's study shows that the rate at which temperatures are rising relative to elevation is higher in Taiwan than the global average. What's more, scientists say climate change has already exacerbated extreme weather patterns, making summers in Taiwan hotter, longer, and drier. Shen says temperate mountain ecosystems are among the most at risk in Taiwan, and the behavior of vulnerable species like the burrowing beetle, which plays an important role in the nutrient cycle, is sounding the alarm. Chris Ma and Wesley Lewis for TaiwanPlus.
A new Taipei elementary school teacher is facing punishment after they were accused of bullying an autistic student. It comes as more attention is being paid to student safety and well-being in Taiwan. John Van Trieste has more.
Over 10,000 handwritten characters. That was the punishment given to an autistic 6-year student at a new Taipei elementary school for breaking classroom rules. It was far from the first time the teacher had disciplined their student this way, forcing them to write countless lines, all recorded on this piece of paper. And this time, when the student failed to finish in time, they were told they couldn't go on a school field trip. The child's father is angry over what he says is bullying that's led to serious emotional distress.
太离谱了，1万多个字，在10几天你就要他全部完成，我大人都难以完成，老师是不是太苛刻了？我已经陪他睡了10来天了，学校就是不闻不问。
The father went to the media, which then prompted the school to take action.
我们就行文到局里面去，请局里面给我们3到5倍的专家学者，或者是特教专长的专家吧，由外面的人来做调查。
And though the city hasn't said what consequences the teacher could face, it says there could be discipline of some kind.
教育局已要求学校依法调查，倘若属实，必定严惩，绝不宽待。另外，移送收局进行裁罚。
Taiwan's outgoing education minister Pan Wenzhong has told lawmakers school bullying will be one of the biggest problems his successor will have to deal with. As this case and others demonstrate, that doesn't just mean students bullying other students, but also overbearing teachers who abuse their power in the classroom. Chris Ma and John Van Trieste for TaiwanPlus.
China says it will sanction 5 political commentators here in Taiwan. They will join a list of people that Beijing labels as separatists and bans from entering mainland China, Hong Kong and Macau. The move comes just days before Taiwan inaugurates its new president, Lai Ching-te. Rick Glauert spoke to political risk analyst Ross Feingold about what these sanctions will mean for the cross-strait relationship.
Why has Beijing targeted these individuals in the latest round of sanctions? And what message do you think China is trying to send?
I think China is trying to remind people in Taiwan that China has a range of options to show its displeasure with political leadership in Taiwan, or even thought leadership, to the extent that people view these 5 individuals as key opinion leaders. It's a first time to go after talking heads directly. Usually China has sanctioned politicians, members of the government, for example, ministers. But again, I think China is just showing, 1, they're going to do this periodically. 2, it's one of their tools analogous to banning certain imports from Taiwan, for example, is one of their tools. And three, that they're going to continue to do these kinds of things targeted at Taiwan periodically.
What impact will these sanctions have on the individuals involved, and what reaction has there been so far?
Well, usually there's no impact because these people aren't traveling to China. There's the symbolic effect. And of course, people who are usually the target of these sanctions happily go into the media and announce that, you know, what an honor it is to be sanctioned from China. Again, this is a bit different because it involves people in private sector. They're not public officials like we saw in the previous rounds. But they'll just go on TV and proclaim what an honor it is, and maybe they'll get a few more people watching their TV appearances, at least for these few days. But I think ultimately that effect will wear off.
Of course, this announcement about the sanctions comes just a few days before Taiwan's next president takes office. What can it tell us about how Beijing is going to deal with the Lai administration?
I think it sends the signal that there's a number of policy actions that China can take. They've demonstrated most of those actions in the past. So whether that's military incursions across the median line in the Taiwan Strait, larger military exercises, import bans on certain Taiwan foods, threatening to end the ECFA, persuading the remaining countries to recognize Taiwan, or sanctioning individuals in Taiwan. So they have the so-called toolbox, and every once in a while they'll reach in and they'll do something. So if they use any of those tools in the coming days again, or in the days after the inauguration, that shouldn't surprise us. Of course, one of the bigger things that is going to occur after the inauguration is China is going to prevent Taiwan once again from participating as an observer in the World Health Assembly later in May.
Public support for LGBTQ+ issues continues to rise 5 years after Taiwan made history by legalizing same-sex marriage. But I went to meet advocates who say that conservative social values are still impacting how queer people are viewed.
同婚支持创新高，同婚支持创新高，友善政策要共好，友善政策要共好。
Taiwan is marking 5 years since its groundbreaking decision to legalize same-sex marriage, making it the first country in Asia to do so. And here in Taipei, advocacy group Taiwan Equality Campaign is announcing the results of a recent survey that shows overall increasing public support for LGBTQ+ issues. Support for same-sex marriage has increased from around 42% in 2020 to over 56% this year. The poll also surveyed the public on their attitudes towards queer people around them, including colleagues, teachers and family members, with some stagnating results, showing people tend to have more conservative views when the issue is closer to home.
In terms of the social friendliness, we see the number kindly have rise a little bit, but stopped for the past 3 years. So we're quite looking forward for another anti-discrimination law or more things done by the government and the civil society to promote our society become more and more friendly.
Taiwan is considered a haven in Asia for LGBTQ+ people, but some issues, such as gay men donating blood and IVF treatment for single women or lesbian couples, still need addressing. But rights groups here are confident that incoming President Lai Ching-te's administration, which is set to take office on May 20th, will continue the groundwork set by his predecessor. Reece Ayers and Devon Tai in Taipei for TaiwanPlus. The Health Ministry has proposed making Taiwan the first country in Asia to legalize surrogate motherhood. The ministry has proposed changes to the Artificial Reproduction Act that would legalize unpaid surrogacy. It would also give same-sex couples and single women access to assisted reproduction services. These treatments are currently only allowed for heterosexual married couples dealing with infertility. Thank you for watching Here's What Happened. Finally, we revisit Taiwanese drag queen Nymphia Wynn's historical performance for outgoing President Tsai Ing-wen. I'm Reece Ayers. Take care, and we'll see you next week.